the quiet exchange student. Calyx's vault didn't just orbit Pharaoh's reach. It hung over it, small and fragile, like a single word spoken too close to a storm that could swallow it whole. Built 3 generations ago by the Sable Concord, the station was supposed to be a symbol of unity, a place where a dozen species sent their brightest minds to learn together. Today, in Lecture Dome 7, it was about to become something else entirely. Deathworlds, said Professor Havek's Orion, letting the word hang in the air like an insult, are a myth. A campfire story dressed up as science. He was Thrindine, tall, narrow, gray-skinned, with 6 eyes that missed nothing and respected even less. He didn't just teach his students. He performed for them. And today his stage was death itself. Crushing gravity, toxic air, predators stacked on predators. Weather that erases cities in an afternoon. He counted the horrors off on clawed fingers, savoring each one. And somehow, some species is supposed to have crawled out of that. Not just alive, but sane. Organized. Building starships. He spread his hands wide, daring anyone to disagree. Does that sound like biology to you? Or does it sound like a bedtime story parents tell to keep hatchlings from wandering too far? Laughter rippled through the room. Kit Sorenvale didn't laugh. His claws were pressed flat against his knees, his throat dry, his chest tight in a way he couldn't explain. Not fear exactly, something closer to dread with no name yet. 2 rows back sat Ren Calder, and she wasn't laughing either. She never laughed. In 3 months, the only human at Calyx's vault had spoken maybe 50 words total, eaten lunch alone, and vanished into her notebook every single class. Today, something was different. Her pen wasn't moving. Her eyes never left the professor's face. "Sir," a Kithran student said, hand half raised. The old survey logs. Some mention encounters with a species matching every Deathworld marker. Strength, durability, aggression under pressure. Corrupted data. Orion snapped, waving it away like smoke he found personally offensive. Fear-soaked exaggeration. No credible body in this Concord has ever verified such a species. It is folklore, nothing more. Then he leaned forward, and his voice dropped into something quiet and cruel. Ask yourselves, if such a species were real, if a world truly could forge something that violent by necessity, would any of you survive 1 single hour on it? Silence answered him, a silence with teeth. And then, from the back row, a hand rose. Every head turned. Ren Calder had never once volunteered in this class, and now, calm as still water, she was waiting to be called on like she already knew exactly how this would end. "Yes," Orion said, thrown for half a second. "The human, you have something to add." "I was wondering," Ren said, and though her voice was quiet, it filled the entire dome like water finding every crack. "If you'd actually like an answer to that question you just asked." The room stopped breathing. It was rhetorical, Miss Calder. Orion's laugh didn't reach his eyes. "But go on. Humor me." "I don't think it was rhetorical at all," she said. "I think it's the most important question you've asked all semester. And I think you're not going to like the answer." Whispers broke out. This wasn't the quiet girl from the back row anymore. This was someone else wearing her face. Orion's 6 eyes narrowed. "And what, exactly, qualifies you to correct centuries of accepted xenobiology?" Ren didn't answer right away. She looked at him the way a storm looks at a house. Patient, certain, already knowing who would still be standing when it passed. Then her gaze drifted up, past the dome, past the slow amber churn of Pharaoh's reach, towards something none of them could see yet. "I could tell you," she said, "but you wouldn't believe me. Not yet." The alarm cut through the room like a blade. 2 low tones. Then a mechanical voice, calm in the worst possible way. "Containment failure. Xenobiology wing, sublevel 2. All students proceed to shelter." This is not a drill. For 1 full second, nobody moved, as if stillness alone could rewind the last 10 words. Then the room exploded. Chairs screamed backward. 40 students crushed toward 2 exits built for half that many, and Ket found himself swept into the current. A Kithran girl's claws locked around his wrist hard enough to bruise. The floor shuddered. Not a tremor, a breath, deep and enormous, like the whole station had just realized something was wrong inside its own body. Emergency lights flared red along the walls. Somewhere ahead, metal groaned under a weight it was never built to hold. That's when Ket understood. The xenobiology wing wasn't some distant lab. It was directly beneath their feet. Someone screamed that the main shelter was already full. Someone else screamed the opposite direction was safer. The crowd, chasing the loudest voice instead of the smartest one, surged into a side corridor, and Ket's stomach dropped as he realized where it led. Not away from the breach. Straight toward it. The lights failed completely. One heartbeat of total darkness, 40 voices calling out at once, and then the red emergency lights stuttered back on, dimmer, angrier, revealing the truth waiting for them. The far wall had buckled inward, twisted like paper in a fist. Through the gap, vapor rolled out in slow, glowing clouds. A Threndine boy had gone down, pinned under fallen paneling, his arm trapped, his face a mask of pain, and the crowd around him didn't stop to help. They ran, leaving him there, screaming for a hand that nobody offered. Ket froze. Every instinct in his body screamed to run the other way, and he obeyed it completely, uselessly, shamefully. Beside him, the professor stood at the edge of the panic with all 6 eyes wide and his mouth working without sound. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then, from somewhere behind them, footsteps. Not frantic, not scrambling. Steady, even, deliberate, walking straight toward the breach. What the vault learned. She didn't run. That was the detail Ket would carry for the rest of his life. Ren called her walk toward the breach with the exact same calm she used to walk into a lecture hall, as if the world hadn't just torn itself open in front of her. Cutting torch. Maintenance kit, 40 meters back. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. Go. Now. For one terrible second, nobody moved. Then something hot and furious cracked open in Ket's chest. The shame of having frozen while a boy screamed for help. And his legs obeyed before his fear could argue. He shoved past 2 Threndine students, tore the panel open, and ran back with the kit shaking in his claws. Ren was already beside the trapped boy, her voice low and steady in his ear. You're fine. Nothing's broken. Stop pulling. The more you fight it, the tighter it grips. Just be still for me. He stilled. She took the cutter from Ket without a word of thanks, without wasted motion, and began cutting exactly where the metal was weakest, like she'd read the whole station's bones the moment she stepped aboard. You knew where the kit was, Ket said, his voice unsteady. First week. I read every schematic on this deck. She didn't look up. Habit. The kind that saves lives. Behind them, the hiss grew louder. Closer. A shape moved through the vapor beyond the gap. Long, low, plated in something that caught the red light like wet stone. A Car 9. Ket's blood turned to ice as the name surfaced from a half-forgotten biology lecture. An apex predator pulled from a survey world, meant to be sedated behind 3 layers of failsafes that had all just failed at once. It swayed. Disoriented, not calm. And disoriented was worse. Disoriented meant unpredictable. Professor. Ren called back, still cutting, never rushing. The sedative log. Was the dosage checked before containment failed? Orion startled like he'd been struck. What? If it was underdosed for its size, it isn't hunting. It's confused. It reacts to noise and sudden movement, not to us standing here. Ren's voice cut through the panic like a blade through fog. Everyone stop screaming. Stay still. Give it nothing to react to. Ket stared at her. So did every student still pressed against the wall behind them. How do you know this? He breathed. For just a second, Ren's eyes met his. Not cold, not distant, something almost gentle underneath the steel. Because I grew up around animals that could kill me 100 different ways before breakfast, she said. You learn to read them fast, or you don't get a second chance. The panel gave way with a final scream of metal. Ren eased the boy's arm free, checked the wrist with quick, practiced hands, and nodded once. Sprained, not broken. You can walk. She raised her voice, not panicked, not loud, just enough to carry down the whole corridor. Everyone, walk backward. Do not run. Running looks like prey. Just walk. It should not have worked. It worked anyway. 40 terrified students, 1 frozen professor, and a half-sedated predator swaying in a ruined research wing. And somehow, 1 calm voice was enough to turn a stampede into a retreat. The Car 9 pushed its head through the widened gap. Vapor rolled off its plated hide as its jaw parted, rows of translucent teeth catching the red light. A gasp tore through the crowd. Ren didn't move. She didn't even flinch. She simply angled her body sideways, dropped her eyes just off the creature's, and waited. Don't look it in the eyes, she said quietly. That's a challenge to something like this. Let it decide we're not worth the trouble. Every second stretched like wire pulled to breaking. Then, impossibly, the creature exhaled, a long, rattling breath more exhausted than aggressive, and sank back into the vapor. Security stormed in seconds later, sealing the breach with mesh and hazard suits. And just like that, it was over. It would take Ket a long, long time to convince his heart of that. That evening, the medical bay was crowded with shaken students and quiet apologies nobody had asked for. Ket sat on the edge of a cot, still trembling, when he saw Professor Orion cross the room toward Ren's corner, smaller somehow, his robes rumpled, every ounce of his morning's certainty gone. Miss Calder. He stopped a respectful distance away. Earlier, you said you could answer my question, but that I wouldn't believe you yet. A pause, heavier than it should have been. I think I'm ready now. Ren considered him the way she'd considered him in the dome, not unkindly, just completely. You asked if any of us would survive one bad day on a real Deathworld, she said. Wrong question. It was never about one bad day. It's about what a species becomes when every day is like that, for 100,000 years straight. You don't survive that unchanged. You come out the other side built for it. Not because you're the strongest thing in the room, but because you learned, generation after generation, how to work together and keep going anyway. She glanced at the fresh bandage on her arm, then back up at him, steady as bedrock. Earth isn't a death world because it's the most hostile place in the galaxy, Professor. It's a death world because it never once made survival easy, and we never once stopped trying anyway. A pause. That's not folklore. That's just Tuesday. The medical bay went silent. Orion opened his mouth, found nothing clever waiting there for the first time in his career, and closed it again. Ket looked at her, quiet, unremarkable Ren Calder, who ate lunch alone and wrote small careful notes, and had just walked calmly into the one thing 40 students and one professor had all frozen in front of, and finally understood why the theory had always made his chest feel tight. It was never fear of a myth. It was the quiet, bone-deep certainty that it had never been a myth at all.